If you wanted to destroy your business in the next 12 months, how would you do it? Most people are too busy to chasing growth hacks to ask that question. But that one sentence might be the smartest question you'll ask as a founder. Why? Because thinking backwards, or what Charlie Munger calls inversion thinking, is a secret weapon of strategic thinkers who don't just build companies, they build empires. This is not another mindset fluff video. We're getting into practical real world application. How inversion thinking has helped entrepreneurs avoid billion-dollar blunders, scale better, and make decisions from a place of clarity, not chaos. So grab a pen. Let's flip your brain inside out. What is inversion thinking? It's very simple. At its core, inversion thinking is just about flipping the problem. Rather than thinking what the solution is to whatever situation you're in, you think what all can go bad, what all problems can you face, what all things that you can, you know, get stuck in. Don't just ask how I can succeed. Ask what could cause me to fail, right? And that's the difference. That small little tweak is what it takes, right? And once you figure out what all are the things that could cause you to fail, you just avoid them. That's as simple as that. It was made famous by German mathematician like Carl Gustav, who said, "Invert, always invert." This was also Charlie Munger's favorite line, and he would keep saying that again and again and again. And Munger always said that all I want to know is where I'm gonna die, so I never go there. It's such a simple concept, but it's so powerful. It's so powerful that it's deceiving because it's so simple, right? Instead of asking, how do I build a startup? You ask, how do I guarantee that my startup fails? And then systematically you avoid those paths. It's as simple as that, but it's at the same time super uncomfortable because you have to think about failure, you have to think about death, you have to think about your own mortality, and you have to remove all of those reasons out of the way, right? And that creates issues. Now, we're hardwired to chase solutions, not to spot threats, right? That's what our brains work on, and that's where this whole inversion thinking shines through. Negativity bias is usually bad, but in strategy, it is what gold looks like. Real genius is not about solving more problems, it's in removing the obvious dumb moves. And that's, again, this is the simplicity of Charlie, right? And that's where I heard about it, and most probably it is where it was popularized by. So, Charlie always said that it's easier to solve problems that are just stupid rather than thinking of other problems. Even Bezos said that, hey, I just want to figure out what are the things that are not going to change in the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and I'll just stick to those, right? And that's what becomes strategic foresight for Amazon and for other businesses like that. Now, in Coca-Cola's case, it was something that they implemented in the 1980s, and it came about beautifully. In the 1980s, Coca-Cola ran a strategic planning exercise. What could kill Coca-Cola in the next 20 years? Right? That's what they thought about, and that's what they wondered about. And the answer, not surprisingly, it was water. As people shift to healthier drinks over time, from sodas to healthier drinks to water became a competitor for them. And so what did they do? They bought every major water company in the world, slowly and steadily, and expanding themselves into hydration. And this backward thinking helped them proactively avoid competition, even when people didn't even know that there was going to be a competition coming about. So the lesson over here is, inversion thinking is not just to avoid failure, it also opens up new market opportunities if you think of it that way, right? It's your attitude towards that mental model that allows for this particular thing. Now, how does how can you apply it as an entrepreneur, right? uh, I really feel that it's really important to understand inversion thinking, and not just understand but also implement it in your own lives. And how I do it is by using and setting my own anti goals. So as Charlie says, that I want to see and I want to understand where I'm going to die, and I'll just make sure that I never go there. It's exactly the same thing, right? The moment I set my own goals of achieving a certain thing, of getting to better health, to maintain better relationships, and so on and so forth, I'm also setting anti goals. What do I not want to happen at the same time? I don't want to drown in the work for like 13, 14, 15 hours a day, and that would just ruin everything else, right? It would ruin my health, it would ruin my relationships, it would ruin my work as well eventually. And so that becomes my anti goal, that I only want to work, say, 6 hours, 8 hours a day, right? Which is what normal people do. But for entrepreneurs, somehow that normalization does not occur, because we are constantly thinking about it. So we have to actively also think about what not to do, right? We have to create those own boundaries. And so those anti goals really help. And that is inversion thinking at its core, right? Similarly, the anti goal could be that I don't want to, spend time away from my loved ones. That means I don't want to travel for the sake of work, right? If I travel, I don't know, 25 days out of 30 in a month, then that's not a good lifestyle, however much I'm earning, right? And so that is an anti goal itself. Similarly, you can apply this to anything. You just have to simply ask, what is it that I don't want? What do I not want my customers to feel? Do I want them to feel confused? No. Do I want them to feel ripped off? No. Do I want them to feel ignored? No. What do I not want them to feel? And accordingly, I work around my goals. Accordingly, I work around my product system. Accordingly, I work around my systems, processes, right? What do I not want my brand to be associated with, right? Do I want it to be associated with cheap? No. Do I want it to be associated with outdated? No, right? And so the moment I realize that, I have to, that becomes a filtration system, that hey, like, I don't want it to be that way, so why am I choosing to join forces with this particular brand, or this particular investor, or this particular partner, whatever that case may be, right? So once you build that list, it's just easy. Then you just have to build your business in the opposite direction, right? Once you know that, hey, I don't want to do all of these things, it just becomes so much simpler. The decision making becomes so much simpler. As the mighty Sherlock Holmes used to say, remove the wrong and what remains is right, right? So, and that's an important thing to understand as a entrepreneur, because we become so busy with the regular day-to-day stuff of being in the business of firefighting, that we forget that we have to think about the business as a whole, that we have to protect it. I remember Jeff Bezos saying that as the business progresses, the whole idea is that I have to peel a layer of risk out of it, right? So it's essentially like an onion, where I'm peeling the layer of risk out of it, and the less layers of risk there is, the more stronger, stable, secure the business becomes, right? So in the case of Amazon, it was about figuring out the business model, figuring out the margins, figuring out the fulfillment center, and so on and so forth. And at every stage, they were able to do that, and that's what made them such a strong business today, right? And so that itself, like, figuring out what are the wrong things, what are the things that the business doesn't want to have, and then going from there, then like essentially taking it up from there, and trying to avoid all of those wrong mistakes that we know for sure. Once we list it out, we know for sure that these are mistakes that we don't want to have, these are the things that we don't want to have, and it allows for the team itself to make a better decision, a more conscious decision, right? um, of course, we've heard of Kodak, right? And these are the famous failures that could have been avoided through inversion thinking. Now, Kodak had the patent for digital cameras. Can you imagine that? They had the patent for digital cameras, but they refused to ask what would make films irrelevant. Now, these are films which were the films that used to come with the cameras earlier, and they just refused to ask that question. They would just, uh, they didn't accept the fact that it could be made irrelevant with the digital cameras that they invented, right? And so they failed to invert and essentially died a slow, nostalgic, but a slow and painful death, right? And it's true. It's true for Blackberry as well. It dominated business phones at one point, right? Everyone had a Blackberry. It was such a big monopoly in that case. But it refused to believe what would happen if all the phones come up with a touchscreen. Okay, and this is when the iPhone launched, of course. So once the iPhone was launched, it just refused to believe that people would want a touchscreen, and it refused to ask this question that how could we become irrelevant to the modern professional once the touchscreen phones come alive, right? And come alive and also become more proficient. And because they did not ask that question, it just failed. And both of these cases, Kodak as well as Blackberry, were not tech failures, right? They were in tech businesses, but they were not tech failures. They failed because they chose not to invert. They chose not to think in terms of failure, in terms of the negative aspects that could affect their business. And because of that, it both of them failed and failed miserably. Now, how do you actually apply it, right? How do you actually apply it in your own life? And that's a common question that occurs to me as well, because it's difficult. It is a lot of work. It is a lot of effort to put in. Even though it seems so surprisingly simple, it's not as simple as that to actually apply it. And so that's what I would suggest. These are things that I do myself, which is how do you that incorporate this inversion thinking in your daily and weekly and monthly cycles of thinking, right? How you start with an anti goal for your week, right? How would I waste this week? Okay, so you essentially just uh, list out all of the ways that you could waste this week and avoid doing those. And so that is like on a personal productivity level, you could think that way. Or if you want to ask for a particular project, you could just ask, how can this project waste our time? Okay, and once you have that list, okay, this project that I'm working on could waste my time in these 5 ways. Now you just have to figure out ways to solve for those, right? So those 5 ways then become solutions. Okay, I can first test it out, I can first iterate it, I can send out a survey, whatever the different ways and methods that you come up with. But essentially it saves you really important time, and it builds up so much more uh, productivity in the system, overall system, with your teams in place, right? So that's how you should apply inversion thinking as a weekly strategy session, either with yourself or with the team that you're involved in. And it really helps because it avoids all the fluff. It avoids uh, the wastage that can potentially happen in the system, right? Similarly, in hiring, you can ask, what kind of person will ruin this team, right? And then once you have the list of characteristics that a person, if they have those characteristics of those personality traits, they would ruin the team, then you remove it. You remove that person completely. You make sure that you hire a person of opposite qualities, or qualities avoiding these things, and that automatically builds a stronger team, a better culture, better company overall, right? Similarly for marketing, and these are all tactical ways that you can think, right? You're still asking the same question, that what all things can ruin my thing, ruin my day, ruin my week, waste my time. How do I, uh, you know, what would be the worst case scenario essentially, and then work from there. Similarly, for marketing, you could ask a question like, "What message would repel our best customers?" Right? What message would repel our best customers? And you try to circle back from there. You avoid all of those things, and you try to completely flip it for yourself. And this needs to become a habit for you personally as well as for your team overall, because the moment it becomes a habit, that's when you've incorporated it in your system. That's when you've put yourself uh, within the shoes of a strategy leader or strategic leader, and you're trying to build it up from there, right? So it needs to be a habit that you actually use. So you stop also, like, once it becomes a habit, you stop adding new and shiny features, and rather you start subtracting the dumb ones. And that's again really important, because it allows you to actually think. It allows you to actually understand what all is stupid, and you've just added it because you were trying to copy someone, or you just took feedback from random people and implemented it. So it's better to avoid stupid dumb things, rather than just mindlessly putting them in as features to your product. And uh, it's something that I faced myself when I was looking for my life partner, the person I married or would want to marry. I It was a very difficult situation, because I was going through this whole arranged marriage phase as well. And you know you would imagine that something so traditional in our Indian culture, uh, and possibly people would know how to kind of work out this problem, work out this, you know uh, literally life changing thing. But I was really surprised when I realized that, hey, no one has a clue of what they're doing. Everyone was just doing the same script of talking to random people, seeing what all you know potential partners are available, and then trying to match through very superficial tendencies and very superficial uh, uh, features. But that was just so shameful. And so I sat down and I realized, and I wrote down, okay, what are the things that I'm not looking for in my partner, right? Or what are the things that would literally repel me from someone, right? From a partner, from a human being, in fact. And once I wrote those down, I knew that the opposite of those things, opposite of those characteristics, is pretty close to the ideal person that I would like to marry, right? So, uh, I knew that, like, for example, for me, it was important that the partner that I have, or at that time, partner that I would possibly have, needs to talk in English, right? So, which again in India, it's not as prevalent as it might seem. So that that one thing, that one characteristic, although it seems superficial, it was not superficial for me, right? For me, it was a very defining characteristics, because that's how I process my thoughts, and that's how I share my thoughts. And if I'm not able to share or converse in English, which is essentially become my first language, it would be a devastating decision from my end, right? It would be a very suffocating decision from my end, because there would be communication lag. And if there is communication lag, it would just, how would you base a relationship on a communication lag, right? And so once I wrote that down, it literally, like, overnight, over not even overnight, in a matter of minutes, I was able to say no to like 10 different people, or whatever, whatever that number is. Like, I could just have a very clear way of distinguishing that, okay, these are the kind of people that I'm looking for, these are the not the kind of people I'm looking for. And that filtration was really important to do, right? And so uh, I understand that it is not sexy. I understand that it takes work, and that's why it is important. I understand that it is difficult to do, and that's why it is important, right? But it is subtraction. It is subtraction, and it is effective as hell. So it's not sexy, but it is really, really effective when you do it again and again, when you make it a habit, when you think about every project that you start from this lens, because it allows you to really fine tune your thinking uh, in such a strong way that takes your results from, like, rather than from going 0 to 1 or 1 to 2, it takes it from 0 to 10 automatically, because you were able to remove a lot of friction that you might possibly have. And so now let's zoom out. Inversion thinking is not a hack, and it would be wrong of you or wrong of me to teach you, or for wrong of you to understand it as that. It is a discipline, it is a consistent discipline that you need to apply every day, every week, every month, every quarter, every year, so that you're able to take it forward in your life. The most strategic founders that I know of ask what is to be avoided before they chase what is to be achieved, right? So you need to know what is to be avoided before you even decide what you need to achieve. Munger used it, Bezos used it and uses it, and Coca-Cola used it, as I told you right now. I used it myself, and I consistently use it in my own life. And now it's your turn. All right. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to comment down below, what is one anti goal that you're going to implement, or that you want in your own business, one anti goal in your own business. Then I want you to subscribe to this channel, to my channel, if you want more real, such no bullshit frameworks and mental models and ways of thinking, because it I make you think better, not just work harder, right? And if you're serious about building a company with strategy, clarity, and longevity, then you keep watching this series of 100 mental models in 100 days, right? 100 business concepts in 100 days. And I will see you in the next one, because inversion thinking is not backward thinking, it's just future proofing your thinking.